This is the old Central School gym. It wasn't the old Central School gym then. It was our gym. It was Central School. And if we lived in Amherst and did not go to St. Joseph's, this is where we went to school for 12 years. Physical education was very, very important. And these young men are dressed with gym shoes on. They don't have shorts and gym outfits, but they're going to do a lot of good marching, and they're going to show you that they know what it's like to move together. We'll get this right. Move together, and one day they'll be able to march in the band. And these are majorettes. I believe it is Yvonne McQueen and Marge Brill leading a snake dance, because those football players that we didn't see earlier, but are getting prepared to play football by marching in line in gym class in school, probably just had a game where they won. And this is Wade Bruns, a handsome history teacher we had, thought so much of. These are our faculty members walking up to a map and probably pointing to Amherst, Ohio, because my dad, when he did these movies, had some neat ideas as to how he thought it should be screened, and Cecil B. DeMille couldn't do any better. We're looking at some teachers here and some students. Some of us will be able to recognize these folks. That's Ethel Roth, the home ec teacher. That looks like one of the PTA ladies, who were very important at the time. Mr. Pryor. They're all looking at something on the globe. It has to be important at that time. In fact, that is Ludolf Krieger, who is Speedy Krieger's dad. That's Thelma Mays, who was our junior high teacher. These are students. There's Thelma again. Her dad was police chief of Amherst, called him Skip, and they called her Skip. This is Miss Murray, who would teach us French and Spanish later. This is a typing class, and I would say it is for adults. These are probably ladies who are going to work maybe in somebody's office and need to know how to type, and they're going to learn at Central School. Now, most of the students would not have been wearing a hat, so I would believe that these are all adults in a stenography class, which would be something else that Amherst would offer, along with the learning English for some of the folks who had just come over from Europe not too long ago. Everybody's important in Amherst. And if you spoke a language that didn't exactly go along with living in the United States of America, there's Dad telling the people that it's important to learn English. And I probably believe these sheep may be at the Miller farm. I brought RV2 Amherst out on Milan Avenue, where they had orchards and the best watermelon. And this would be the FFA, Future Farmers of America class, teacher Carl Deeds. And these kids really got out on farms and learned a lot about the art of farming, because many of them would go into that kind of work when they graduated from high school. Prize steer. Also the 4-H, they would take these to the fair. That's a little bit of handling, a steer that's a little rowdy. I believe this is still the Miller farm out on Milan Avenue, across from IGA. I think that's Johnny Kingsley. The Future Farmers was a very diverse class, and this is a young man, I think his name is Benedict, and he visited his schools, and I believe he was killed in World War II. This would be the future farmers again pruning trees, probably apple trees. That may have been Mr. Parker Miller.
I think it would be noteworthy to mention that your father was given this video camera, or movie camera rather, when?
Between 1936 and 1938.
Okay.
The teachers gave it to him, and he went totally bonkers after he got this camera. That's Dr. Maynard Brooker. This would be the class of 42, I believe. Molly Kaiser. And there's our band again. The band director then was Ed Kiefer. And that's another snake dance.
Could you explain what a snake dance is for people that may not know?
A snake dance is what you have when you win a game, and the games were played in the afternoon, and you walk through town in a pretty much of a single line, and we called that a snake dance, and you could kind of wiggle around a little bit in line, but you didn't get too much out of line because the police wouldn't have liked that. But we celebrated in that way. This is the manual training class. Would have been on the opposite side of the home economics room in Central School. Actually would have been on the north side of the building, in the north corner. Monktown, that's Mr. Hearn, the school teacher, the teacher at that time in the 30s, late 30s. That's one of the Hassenflue boys. They learned to do a lot of work with tools, and many of the students were able to go out and get a job in a factory as soon as they left high school. Dad got some, Spatsy Sparrow, Dad got some tools from the left over from the wartime, and we had a tool shop in our school that was equal to a tool shop in a factory. Russ Krieg. They made things out of metal, out of wood. They made tools. And this would be some of their work that they had done in the manual training room, some of the woodwork. Beautiful work. That, of course, is at the front door at Central. That's an accomplishment. Cedar chests, which were very popular back then. You got married, you had to have a cedar chest to keep your nice things in. Shelves, end tables, bookcases, drawers in the tables. The young folks took a lot of pride in making these things, and I'm sure to this day, these pieces of furniture are still very well appreciated and cherished. Tools, spades, hoes, anything you'd need to make your garden the best garden in the neighborhood. and that is a horse. 2 horses, and then 3, and I'm not quite sure where those horses are, but they may be at someone's farm here in Amherst. And that seems to be time for lessons about horses, because they're all with their little notebooks taking notes from somebody who knows what they're talking about. Chickens? My, what would Amherst do with all those chickens? The council meeting would be hopping all over, wouldn't they? Just think of all those wonderful eggs. And that is a little in-between time, which you could run and get something to snack on and come back and sit down. Now, this, I believe that the Congregational Church, when they were celebrating, could be about, no, I don't think it is either. I'm going to back up on that one. Those are students, and those students are at school. The church is around the corner. Now, there could be a senior class, and you see the sailor there. You know, you couldn't wait to get out of school sometimes, and when you went to the service, one of the first things you wanted to do was come back and visit the school. That's the way life is. And this would be, I would say, a baseball game. Now, that could be Bud Laif, who was our chief of police at one time. And these are some of the neighbors watching the game. This would be down at, I would say, Harris Field. And that's a baby, and I don't know if it's one of mine or somebody else's, but there's Ida Trusello and Evelyn Stark, I believe. They were cheerleaders at one time and excellent tennis players. And that, I believe, is Leonard Wilson, who was in charge of the athletic field, took care of the tennis courts and any of the other activities that needed supervising. On a rainy day, we'd sit in the field house on place 66. We had wonderful tennis courts, and we had tournaments. And some very good, that's Ida Trusello. Her dad was a shoemaker in Amherst, and Evelyn Stark. 2 very popular cheerleaders, and the contrast of their coloring was amazing. Ida was Italian, and Evelyn, I think, was Irish. Seesaws, swings. This is all down by the tennis court. Horseshoes. And this is a famous grindstone that Dad always chose to have people walk past when there was an important scholarship test that people had accomplished. This grindstone, of course, came from the quarry, and it hasn't been too long that it had been removed. And there's Rosemary Roddy carrying the American flag. I think these are the children from the school. It was at the sanatorium when the children who had been tested for tuberculosis and found to be positive went to school down there, because they stayed there in the building, and the teacher was Mary Bach George, and that's Mary Powers. It's me. This is the home ec class. at Central School, and the teacher is Selma Workington. The girls are making bread. We could say girls then. I think that's Eula Ray Johnson. Oh, now they're going to come out the door of the home ec room with their loaves of bread, each and every one. And I believe it's a class of 1942 again. And that bread was good. Imagine how good you felt when you produced a loaf of bread like that. And this would have been from one of our pageants. The young ladies, I would say, were doing the minuet in the front lawn of Central School. Best school in the land. Now you know that had to take some practice. And now the younger boys are coming out who have made things in shop class or manual training. Time to go and get your snack again. As I said, my dad loved to take pictures of the accomplishments that the kids had created in our school. Mr. Hearn, again, the manual training teacher. I believe that. I'm sure if that's Joe Whiten or not. Now that cedar chest would cost some money, and here's Ida and Evelyn doing some cheerleading. They were the prettiest cheerleaders. This is in front of the old post office in downtown Amherst. Looks like Huey McGarvey. All right, now there's a reason for that number. Oh, 1, 2, 3. Notice how the students are dressing. You don't see flip-flops on their feet. There are shoes that can be repaired. We had 2 shoemakers in town, and they were both busy. This is a graduating class. I can't quite pinpoint what year it would be. Would be in the 30s, I would say the late 30s. And those smiles were not just put on smiles. We really had a good time in school. This may be the class of 1941. Wow, now here, this is the beginning of, it has to be graduation time. That's Martha Holstein and Betty Herbst. That's Eddie Foster. I think that's 1942. I'm going to see somebody else and I'll think it's another year. but it was in the 40s. That's my mom. Talk about physical fitness. When we went out on the football field, it took a while before we got hurt. Physical fitness was very important. Still is, but it's kind of overlooked of late. Now this is some place where there are a lot of rocks. Now where on earth is that? They probably all rode out there on a school bus to get those pictures taken. I think that was Dick Ott. If that's the case, it's 1940. That's right, my cousin Marilyn Peach Jenny, class of 1940 this is. Wouldn't be too many years before they would be going off to war. Wow, we've got some Amazon women here. They are really moving along. And gentlemen going up that hill, look at that. Now they decided to do that themselves because they're having fun. We did have fun in school. Lots of it. That's Bob Wenzel, one of the Amherst first male cheerleaders. Now somebody won an award. I think that's Joe White, and he was very good in science, won all kind of awards. He was from one of the founding families in Amherst. Okay. Now this is posed, you can tell that, but what is it? That is very interesting. I don't know if where those steps are. I'm trying to figure that out. This is a little trick I think my dad picked up from the circus. As you will see, this would be a graduating class, all coming out of his car. I'll try and pinpoint his class, not sure I can. That might be that class of 42 again. We had a couple of doctors come from that class. People of many different professions and interests. Seemed when people graduated from high school back then, they were really ready to start out with life. I don't know if it was the result of the depression that we went through and didn't realize we were going through it because our parents did such a good job of making life this Danny Mahuta. Danny Mahuta did an art show on WVIZ for years for schools. I believe that's the old town post office. This would be, I would think, a Memorial Day parade. There's Dan Mahuta again. Dan is an artist and an educator. And this is some of the high school, these are some of the high school kids dressing up as police officers. Now this is someone's home in Amherst, Ohio. Someone's lilac bush, and I think it's where I lived on Cornell Avenue because we had a beautiful lilac bush. Came from the Loosler home. And this would be the Memorial Day parade, when every year people came to Central School playground. Dad opened the trunk of his car, got out the flags, teachers were there, students were there. We marched in the Memorial Day parade, but back then it was Decoration Day. As far as my mother was concerned, it never changed from that. She told when they were little girls, this would have been before World War I. This would have been after the Civil War and Spanish American. The little girls dressed in white, and they prepared bouquets at City Hall the night before Decoration Day and carried those bouquets in the parade and put them on the graves of the soldiers from Amherst who had died. And that Memorial Day, Decoration Day parade, Mother, we all were so excited that we got to march in the parade, and it still is a little hard for us old people to see the kids all riding in trucks. We walked. Track meet at Amherst. We had some good people on that track. Hurdles. Not sure which year it was. Ralph Thomas was one of the best hurdlers in the area. Graduated from Amherst about 30, maybe 38 or 39. His name was Ralph, but they called him Tuffy. This is a quartet of Edwin Foster, Ray Ragg, Earl Steiwald, and Jim Bauer. Now this is the band coming through, I believe. Something that they thought up to be interesting for a movie, and it is. And there is Army and Navy V, or is it an A for Amherst? Take your choice, because if it was during the war, it would have been a V for victory, and it could always be an A for Amherst. The custodian, I believe it could be Mr. Shiverstein, mowing the football field. That was called Harris Field at the time because it was at the bottom of Harris Street. I think that could have been a Latin banquet because they are eating as Julius Caesar would have eaten. Very relaxed. And the younger students would have to wait on the older ones. I always regretted that I didn't take Latin. I talked my dad out of it, that I wasn't going to, and now I'm sorry. This is a class of 1943. Now, Elaine Heyman was in that class, but she really wasn't. She was in our 1944 class, but she was able to jump ahead, so. Eddie Foster. And here's a keeper of the books for some reason. These would have been awards that were won at the state level. Amherst kids won a lot of awards at the state level. This could have been from the Christmas program. We had one in chapel every year. No, that wouldn't be Christmas. That looks like some spring flowers. This would have been a rhythm band, I believe. You wore little hats and little capes, and you had rhythm sticks and bells and tambourines, and you had a band. This also would have been part of a pageant. I believe those would be flowers. And I believe those would be flowers. Jonquils or daffodils, maybe. Now, it took a while to make those outfits. And we were all very proud if we got to be a flower or play in the rhythm band. Oh, I believe that was a rabbit. More than one. Poppies. Wow. Looks like Mother Hubbard over there. Okay. Is that a street or a floor of a room? How many pair of slacks do you see on the ladies? I believe this is the fire department having a display or some type of a special event. They may have just purchased that piece of equipment. We've always had an excellent volunteer fire department. My great-grandfather was on, I think, about the first. I think that's Phil Brown right there. Oh, that's a water fight. Who's going to push who is going to push who back? Is that a male? No, is that a male lady? Oh, we've got some animals again, and their tails are tied up, so they must be there to be pretty. Num num something. Is it pretzels and potato chips? Okay, these could be, those are some Amherst professional people and some students. This could be for the Amherst Old Home Week. That's John Smythe, and look, it could be my mom in that plaid coat. And this is the Eagles ladies drill team. They were very good. And this is an Amherst Day when they had actual floats that they put hours, probably as much as they put on the Roseville floats, to be in the Amherst Day parade, Old Home Week. To Drum Corps. I think that's at A. Nabokowski. That's Mary Edwards' Beauty Shop. Now that is an old car. Now this could be Alvin Zimmerman flying over. He did that. He was owned Zimmerman's Dairy, but he would fly over Amherst for holidays like Memorial Day, Decoration Day. 4th of July. This was from a pageant that was held on Central School property. It was a huge pageant, and somebody came in from out of town to direct it. And this is Mrs. Eva Miller. These are the Scouts in this parade, the Legion, Rotary. That is the Amherst Fire Department. That may have been Captain Steiwald. This is another drill team. Not sure if this is Eagles ladies or not. I remember the women, they wore red shoes, and I thought that was so neat. I wanted a pair of red shoes. I believe that's Paul Brown riding that unicycle. That's some more of that pageant that was done on Central School ground. And I believe that could be Mayor Smythe. And this is going down to the old spring. I think that's my mother and me. And you could drink that water then. Okay. This is, they had a little, they had built like a little log building to be the office for the Old Home Week headquarters. And that was it, sitting right there. And there's our police department. The police car always parked up in front of the bandstand. That is a drum and bugle corps from someplace. That's not ours, but they came in for the parade. This is to celebrate Old Home Week. Covered wagon. I'm sure that was part of the pageant. This is Salvation Army.
Could you explain what Old Home Week was?
Old Home Week was like the Jamboree. It was a celebration of when Amherst was founded.
Was it really a week long, or was it?
Sometimes it was several days, yeah. Sometimes it was almost a week long. That's the band, but we had green and gold capes. Now these would be school kids, Scouts. Pretty nice horses in this. That would be our fire department. That's when the fire department was underneath the town hall. The back. Believe me, a lot of time was put on those floats. There's the Eagles ladies drill team again. No, they didn't have red shoes on, they had white ones. That is, I think they called it the Rube Band. It was a good band. And it was mostly Amherst people. My Uncle Ed was in that band. That's Paul Brown again. Lived on Franklin Avenue. This is a Congregational church. The Rotary Club obviously met there. And I would say these are members of the Amherst Rotary back when it was pretty new. the Congregational church lady served the dinners, and Cynthia Munger used to live across the street down a little ways. And sometimes she'd come over in the morning in her bathrobe, put the roast in the oven. There's Dad. Lee Menz was a member of Amherst Rotary. He had the lumber company, and back then when you were a Rotarian, you were supposed to go to every meeting, no matter where you were. He even went over. Okay, there he is. Lee Menz even went overseas. These are the ladies who cooked the meal. Bicycles were very, very important back then. We didn't have a huge parking lot for cars to be parked so one could get to school. We rode bicycles or walked. We went home for lunch, and our mothers were there to fix us a lunch. And it was often toasted cheese sandwich and tomato soup was one of the specials. That's Skip Mays, one of our Amherst policemen, telling some kids about how to be careful bike riders. I think my son Norm said this was a bike riding seminar, kind of. The police were helping about bicycle safety, do's and don'ts. It's a friendly policeman. It was Earl White, Ed Mays, and Caroline Wachter was police officer at the time. We called him Officer 6 and 7/8. I'm not sure why, but we did. Maybe because he was part-time officer, I'm not sure. Now somebody's walking along the sidewalk, and I think it's a lesson as to how to be walking on the road, how to ride a bicycle on the road, and how not to. And as is evidence recently in the area, there are still bicycle accidents that can be fatal.
I believe, Norm, your son and I figured out that this was South Main just after the dip.
Okay, makes sense.
So we would be looking towards town, I believe.
Yeah. So they're walking on the left, riding on the right. Skip Mays was very tall. His daughter Alita married Bob Beasing, and they both passed on within the last couple of years. Alita was a cheerleader, and she was also an excellent tennis player. Now notice there are some flag bearers at the front this time. They're not carrying flags right now, but the 4 young women at the front, yes, they do have their flags. And the majorettes are the Kaza twins. they came from Lakewood, and they were, I believe it was in their senior year. And here they were, they could twirl, they could do all these wonderful things, and they became a wonderful addition to our band. Millie and Nellie. Their sister was Mrs. Gatonik in the big house out on North Ridge Road. You know, it wasn't a great big band, but they knew how to march in a line, didn't they? And we had pretty good sound. Girl Scouts are always, we had a good-sized Girl Scout group. The Legion. Fire Department. This is a list of Army and Navy E people, the people who worked for U.S. Automatic, which became Nordson, and went to the armed forces. They would have their name on a, I think that's still at the Historical Society. I think that would be the Legion Auxiliary behind the Legionnaires. Now that's Harry Sabiers. He was the president of our class. Now I'm beginning to think that's my class. Must have been at a graduation. Jerry Wilhelm, Cutts Taylor. Wow, that was a good. Tom Simpson. Always wanted to goof around. Not Tom, but it was somebody else. His dad was one of the was principal at Amherst, and he was superintendent up of South Amherst. That's Millie and Nellie twirling while the class is going to walk by, I bet you. Okay, what did Norm say that was?
Dropping a charge of dynamite in.
I wonder if that's when the well was dug
Yes.
at our house.
Correct.
Wow.
You'll see in a moment here they set it off, and it's quite a...
He was a general. He was from Vermilion.
It's interesting to know when it's about to go off, he just very nonchalantly walks away like no big deal.
Isn't that something? That was a good well. Oh my goodness. That would have been our house on Cooper Foster Park Road. That's some of the little ones. That's Norm Miller, Sr., original. That's Lawrence Clausen, who was the area photographer. And that is the side of the house, probably before it was painted red. Could that be Miss Liz and Miss Julie? Yep. And Grandpa. That's Mr. Miller. That was a sand pile next to the house. That was our little swing outfit. Appreciate him while you got him. Oh, and that's the little red wagon. Little red wagons have been forever, haven't they? That's a little playhouse. Okay, it looks like we're back at the track down at Harris Field. I'm not sure when it became Memorial Field. We had some very good runners. And Bob Mahuta and Bob Music ran when they went to BW in the track team there. I'm wondering, was that Harrison Dillard? Is that at BW? That could have been Harrison Dillard. I think it is. Who ran in the Olympics and was a star at Baldwin Wallace. I'm thinking it was. Now I'm trying to figure, wow. Trying to get my thoughts together on this. Bunch of people marching, that's for sure. When we were seniors in high school, the May of 1944, we marched, our whole class marched, the ones who weren't in the war. I believe it would be Decoration Day again. If the kids are carrying flags, but they're not, are they? This would be another Old Home Week or there's something definitely important going on here. It's Cleveland Street Cemetery there. Yep. 21 gun salute. I believe this is Congregational Church. I'm wondering if it's when they took the ceiling out for the second floor. because we had what they called, it's Reverend Parks at the front there, we had what they called the Amherst Gymnasium because they didn't have one at the school. That's Chief Rickett. Now what's he doing there? Could be helping. Because they didn't have a gym at the school at the time. The town used the gym, the school used the gym. 2 basketball nets at either end. And then in the 50s probably, they took out the ceiling and it became all one great big room, but it wasn't a gym anymore. There's a location there we think might be Crown Hill Cemetery. We're not sure about this. Is that me there? With the long blonde hair. A slim waist. Huh, must have been a while ago. Couldn't do that either. That is a turtle. Now this might have something to do with future farmers, because they went to different people's orchards and cleared the orchards. Now I'm not sure if this might be outdoor life. Got some short-footed people, that's for sure. That looks like Harris Field.
Now, was Harris Field the same location where Memorial Field stands
Yeah,
today?
that's it, because that was Harris Street. Well, it still is Harris Street that goes right down into it off Cornell.
And who owned that field at the time? Was it
The school.
Okay.
That's Normie Miller, who was killed in North Korea in the Korean War. He was very good in track. Looks a little different today, doesn't it? But it certainly served a purpose back then. And as I said, the football games were in the afternoon, but we would usually play one a year under the lights at Lorraine. Now these, that could be that could be the Eastman family. Or is that the Standen family? If that is out at a farm picnic, that's what it would be. Celebration for somebody. Somebody got married. Could be Wayne and Grace Fritz. It was a big family, and they used to get together in the summer and have a blast. Ford came along and bought their whole farm for $25,000, and they were so excited.
About when was that?
When Ford came to Amherst,
I
or
would guess
Lorraine.
Early 50s,
I would say, yeah.
Okay.
That looks like either nighttime or morning time. Does that say?
Millersburg.
I bet that's a little bit of one tank trip type thing here. Civil War statue. Railroad. We had a picture of a calf being born. Now, I don't know if that's on here or not. Do you remember that?
A cat?
Calf.
I don't recall
C-A-L-F. Out in the field, a field. We were just driving along.
That might be it right there. It's hard to see because it's bright in here, but I see.
I seem to be haunted by those pictures of me with a small waistline. These, I believe, are the Wilhelms. The Buckeye, was Buckeye 5? That's Teddy Short. That's a mock wedding that they had at school. And that's one of the Engel kids. And that's the Congregational Church. And that's Reverend Kuntz was doing some painting. There he is in the pulpit. Kenneth Kuntz, but he did paint the parsonage, which is an odd thing to happen today. The pastor out painting the parsonage. He was an Oberlin Theological School graduate. And that's Bill Fehrenbaugh. He was a custodian. He's painting too. I remember he gave me a hug at our wedding and knocked the veil off my head. That's Sandra and Bob Walker, Sandy Muska. And that's when they're playing at the Congregational Church. I think that was Mr. George Carter, who came from Scotland. And some of the trustees. That's Mayor Cooper. Earl Hanlon. How about that? That's Evelyn Hanlon with Earl, and this is some of the church ladies. It's a Mary Martha choir. My Aunt Ethel, Helen Chibley, who directed it. Mame Brainerd. I could name every one of them. And that's Marion L. Steele, this is her Mary Martha Sunday School class.
Is that at her home?
No, it's at the church. She started the class, and then they started the choir. That's my mom and my grandma. Kuss. Now, that's our garden out behind the house. This looks like the side of the church, the back of the church. Looks like they're back at it again. We must have had a dinner at church and a celebration, and now this is the fun time. This is at the side of the building. It's Reverend Kuntz again.
For those unaware, it's the Amherst Congregational UCC, which is on South Main Street behind the fire station.
This is right. It's one of the older churches in Amherst. Those are little kids. We had an open area classroom downstairs. It's Ken Alexander and his mom. There's more of the June Bruce, Dorothy Walker, Phyllis Sabiers, Dorothy Mins, my mom, Ted Alexander. So notice the ladies' hats. It was important. This is a junior choir led by Mrs. Bernice Carter, who was the original Dr. Schaefer, the dentist, Bill Schaefer's sister. She was Bernice Schaefer. And then, now wait a minute, this time it's after Bernice started. There was that person directing there was Jean Lowry, and that's Reverend Kuntz's wife, Ruth. They just got married. Central School. No, that's not Central School. That's the, yes it is.
Old Stone.
No, it's the Old Stone Church. Always reminded me of a palace, and that's Reverend Maxwell, who left the Amherst to become a chaplain in World War II. Reverend Kuntz and Reverend Maxwell shaking hands, going the front steps of the Congregational. And that's Mr. Noft. He would come to church different times from a far-off place and sing, and that's me with him because I was organist at the time, and I played for him to sing. There's Dad, and that was Jean Lowry, the lady. Now, is that Art Engel? The principal, George Walker. That's Bill Bruce, Sr. Fleming Brainerd, whose son was killed in Vietnam. He was an officer. That's Homer Haynes, who was he taught stenography at the school, and that's Bill Fehrenbaugh again. Mayor Cooper, Cynthia Munger, she's the one that would come over in her bathrobe to put a roast in the oven. Rose Lauer, Mrs. Brooke, there's the Grandma Schaefer of all the mother of all the many Schaefers, original Schaefers. These are people coming out of the church. We should have this for the anniversary. Wow. Look at all.
Sometime in the 40s?
Yep, look at all the ladies in the hats. Isn't that nice? Mm-hmm. That's Reverend Tom Williams. He came after Reverend Kuntz and his sister Edna. That's Mr. Marshall and his wife. They're going too fast for me here. Somebody's dog. Somebody's chickens. Look at those nice chickens. I wonder if this could be the Alexander farm. It's Reverend Kenneth Kuntz again.
And that gold cross that we were just viewing was donated, I believe, by Miss Steele, correct?
I don't know. I didn't know that unless it was. And that's a picture that my folks gave for grandparent. Oh my goodness.
Recognize that one?
I recognize her. Started when I was 16. Get Grandma Schaefer again. She was so proud of her big family. Reverend Williams. Now, when you went to church, you got dressed up. You wore gloves sometimes. Suit and tie. That's an Alexander. That's Ted. Looks like Lou Good. That's another view. Okay, there's those athletic endeavors again. I'd say that's football this time. And you know, they had the field house down at Harris Field, but they had to walk up to Central School to get their showers. Can you imagine? They didn't get bused up there? C-O-C-O-C-O-M-E, M-E, M-E, M-E-T-S, C-O-M-E-T-S, C-O-M-E-T-S, comets, comets, rah, rah, rah. And that might be just what they're doing. That's Ida and Evelyn, blonde and brunette. Mr. Bruns, I bet Mr. Hubbard's sitting there too. Mr. Bruns and Mr. Hubbard eventually went to the Navy during World War II, but Bob Hubbard was a coach that never let anything get him shaken up. He would sit there as calm as a clam, happy as a clam, not always happy as a clam, as the game went on. Never got all stirred up. Inside maybe, but his son Wade taught it, the high school here in Amherst for years. Bob was our 7th grade English teacher. Now those are the Amherst businessmen come to the football game, and notice they have hats on like the people do in the movies that you saw from the 40s. Men just wore those hats. That would be Bob Wenzel. He did Big Apple, Big Apple, Little Apple, Susie Q. Come on, Amherst, we're trucking for you. It was different to have the afternoon games.
Was that simply due to lighting?
Mm-hmm. Referees pretty much look the same, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
There was a song back then, "You've got to be a football hero to get along with a beautiful girl." Probably be about the time of the Andy Hardy movies.
Norm wasn't sure that this was a home game for Amherst. He thought perhaps Vermilion. We saw a jersey with a V on it.
Oh, could be.
But he didn't.
They look pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Except it was always colder at Vermilion because it was closer to the lake. I wonder if that's that one time we got into a sea, couldn't get out of it. I was a majorette then. Grace Stywald and I, we could not get out of that sea. Look at the ladies even wore hats sometimes to a football game. I think that's a pretty active team. They had to play right after school was out. My mother said when she was in high school, they used to take a streetcar if it would be a Vermilion game. I think the team would probably be on the streetcar too. I wonder if that's when Charlie Alexander was drum major. That's Yvonne McQueen, Alfred. She was a ballerina. Could have been in the Russian ballet had she so chosen. She would dance for many of our chapel programs that we would have every Friday. That must be that's Shirley Ward. Could be Shirley Ward, who was in my class, who was also an acrobat. We're back painting a house, but I'm not sure which one it is. Okay, now who is that? That wouldn't be that building that's on the, was on Central School Play, I think it is. It's a building that was on, or is it Central School Playground? Or is that a whole house? Well, it looks like it got a whole team painting. It's either the Future Farmers or some scholarship group or some honor group is painting a building for a reason, and I wish I knew what it was. Now there's a building right next to the Central School that was called the Peyton House, where the school board met for several years. It could have been that building. Okay, another set of cheerleaders. It looks like Katie Brown, Pat Linebaugh, Pat Penton, very possibly. Elaine Reichert, I think. That was pretty exciting to be playing football in Amherst, Ohio. That's Cap Deeds, who was the future farmer teacher and also the football coach. Be playing football in Amherst, Ohio and have your picture taken on a movie. Back then, that was great.
Now, when you say Future Farmers of America teacher, was it an actual program?
It was an actual class. It was an actual class.
So would that be similar to perhaps a trade program today, such as Joint Vocational School?
Yes.
Same idea?
Well, they go out onto different farms in the area and do certain chores for them and learn in the meantime. This would be the band around 1943. 42, 43. 44. Russ Slumsky. That was Mr. Moore directing the band at that time. Floyd Moore. He was my piano teacher. He threw a footstool or a wastebasket at my cousin once because he didn't have his lesson right. It's Katie and Connie Kaminas and Pat Penton, I think. Somebody from the Navy home on leave, couldn't wait to get back to school. These are some of the Amherst businessmen attending the game. You even see a couple little puddles in that grass, but by golly, it worked.
And what did they call that down there before the schools were built?
Harris.
No, but didn't they have a nickname for the area before the Steel and Powers were built?
You mean Fred's Frog Pond?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But that didn't include the football field.
Okay.
It was east of there. This could have been around 43 and 44. Maybe that's that sea we got in a good get out of. And then to add insult to injury, after we won that game, and we decided without the permission of the band director to have a snake dance through town, and he was a little unhappy with us. We just took him through, because after all, we won.
Now, you discussed that the snake dance was done after a football win. When were those
Right
done?
after the game, right after
Okay.
the game. See, the team would have to go up to the central school to shower, and sometimes we could follow the team, or sometimes the band would just march, because we had to march back to central school to put the instruments back and everything, get it all located.
So the games, were they directly after school ended?
Yes.
Okay.
Then the snake dance went right through town.
Up Harris Street to...
We would go, I'm sure, up Harris, down Cleveland, and possibly, up Church then, right to school, unless we went the back way and would go on South Main and go in, that's my Grandma Powers, and go back in the across Central School parking lot, because sometimes they kept the band instruments. They called that extra building that was out on the playground the band room, and they would practice in there and have their instruments in there. It was also a reading building at one time, years and years ago. Not sure where that is. Did Norm know?
Can't remember. Smoky Mountains, I think he might have said.
Could have been, because Mother and Dad went down there, and Harry. I wonder if that's California. Looks like the Smoky Mountains. That's Mother and Harry. I bet that was the Smokies. I think that was our 36 Dodge. We bought right before we went to California. You could only go like, I don't know, 25 or 35 miles an hour for like the first 500 miles when you got a new car. Yeah, this has got to be the Smokies. Wish I'd have gone down there now. Beautiful. I know they also stopped in Kentucky where Stephen Foster wrote My Old Kentucky Home. This would be more than a one-tank trip, wouldn't it? That almost looks like it has color to it. Little black bear. I wouldn't be able to locate a bunch of stuff in there, would I?
Where's that?
Living in a wigwam. No, they went to Gatlinburg. Color. Wonder how much more it cost.
The film?
Colored film. Oh, that's somebody dousing a well. Well, that's Parker's uncle. That's great Uncle Gay. And he could do it too. That's Mr. Miser, shop teacher. This would be in the 40s. Now that's pretty good to get to learn that. Alan Miser. I think Mr. Wagner came after Mr. Miser. You know, the kids in that class had to be responsible too, because you couldn't fool around with that stuff. And they were. I don't ever know of any problem with any of that, those tools. trying to figure out who that is.
Was this all on the ground floor of Central School?
It was, it would go out to the, it was on the same floor as the gym.
Okay.
And it was on either side of the gym. The one side of okay, if you were looking at the stage, the right side of the gym would be the home economics department. And the opposite side would be the manual training and the showers for the football teams, or the athletic teams, the guys.
Because obviously, in
And you,
this time, who played the sports? It was the guys.
and it would go right out the door to that bottom level part of at Central School. Before you go up to the playground, there's that kind of a depression. You have to go look. Well, you can't. Yeah, still, still should be there. You could go out the gym door, or go out the door of the home economics room, or go out the door of the manual training room onto the playground of the school. Well, he would have made that tool, or that piece, I should say. And eventually, it went to rust, all that equipment. Some more of our good work that's done in the metal shop. These kids are professionals by the time they leave there. It's a responsibility for the teacher, too, because these instruments here are very delicate and can be dangerous. But as I said, I have never heard of an accident where anyone would have been hurt to any point of having to stop having a shop like this, or keeping the students from being a part of it. I wanted to mention the young man on the unicycle in the pictures way back, I said was Paul Brown. His mother was Ada Doody, and Valerie Epley Jenkins Gerstenberger's mother was Ethel Doody. So Paul Brown would have been a cousin to our Valerie, who is now 102. Mr. Miser again. That's Neil Hollingsworth. Neil did a lot of work in a machine shop. Very talented. Neil was a member of the Congregational Church and sang in our choir. I'm just amazed at what these kids are doing. These are high school kids. And they don't act like they are worried about their mission as to how they're handling the equipment. They're well trained, which is a wonderful statement for Mr. Alan Miser. Later on, Bill Wagner came along. The kids called him Scooby, I believe. Scoobs. And taught that class. Some of these kids I don't recognize because I was kind of out of the picture when I came to school at that time. I was home raising my kids. I wasn't teaching yet. somebody's going to recognize them.
So this would be very late 40s, early 50s, perhaps?
Yeah, I would say the 50s. I don't know if that's one of the Beams or not. Could be Dick Beam. If not, looks like one of them. Looks like a beam. Some more very nice pieces of furniture these kids made. Could be junior high, high school. And they're all very proud because they did that themselves here in the shop. I think that's one of the Greer boys, whose dad had a taxi service in Amherst for a while. Now those metal pieces were very intricate to make as well.
Would that have been a separate class? Was there a wood shop and a metal shop, or?
Well, it would have been in the same room, but I don't know if they taught it at the same time. Now that looks like somebody from my house.
That would be who?
It's Julie.
So we're definitely not necessarily in chronological order on this.
No.
So the viewers can understand that when these were converted, not exactly sure when.
Yeah.
They were
Well, she was born in 49.
Well, there were many film reels that went into this, obviously. I believe Judy Alexander and Bill Strom were to thank for the conversion.
Yeah, she's learning to walk. She had her arm in her shoulder in a little brace because she fell out of bed. That's her daddy. That's her grandma Cliff. She's a little chunky one. Wasn't chunky after that, though. That's where we are, walking from Elyria Avenue in that sleigh that it belonged to my Aunt Ethel.
Jingle bells on it?
Yeah. All at once he learned to walk. That's felt like I'd get around now. Considering everything, she was doing better. And what's this all about? Oh, that's the Ichi dance. That's the house on Cornell Avenue, which I wish they stayed in. That's Lizzie. Lizzie was a very happy baby. That would be California. famous Brown Derby restaurant. And Harry and my mama had just gone there. I went there once with my brother, and Jean Tierney knocked a glass of water over on the table. Not our table, but a table there. So movie stars can be klutzy too. That was a famous restaurant, the Brown Derby. My brother was such a wonderful piano player. Played a lot by ear. My mom. That piano's at Norm's now, isn't it? Or is this in California? It could be. Oh, that's in California. It's his piano. Mother and Harry. See how nice she's walking. Somebody's ranch. Well, one of my mother's favorite movies was Stagecoach. Sure, I'm sure she was excited when she got to almost get inside of that. Beautiful country out there.
And this is near, remind me of the city?
Would be near South Pasadena.
Thank you.
Or Los Angeles, one or the other. Of course, they're close. Where they have the Rose Bowl. Well, Pasadena's where they had the Rose Bowl parade. The Rose Bowl football game and the parade. That would be one of the missions on the trail that was set up all the way up the coast of California, the Trail of Missions. That's the garden out in the back of Cornell Avenue. Harry and Julie.
And that house still stands today?
Oh, yeah. That was my house. It was where I grew up.
And then your dad bought the house on Cleveland Avenue approximately when?
About the same time Power School happened.
So about 52, 53?
In the early 50s, yeah, before the early 50s. See, I think when Norm was a baby, he was born 50, Liz was born 51, we still lived on Cornell. So it would have been about 52.
Okay, help me out. Who do we see here?
That's my brother. That's
Okay.
my brother Harry. That's my mother. That's Julie. Mother's got Julie, and Harry has Liz. Did he? Yep, Mother's got Liz there. Liz was active, very active, from the time she climbed out of the playpen. Julie was more peaceful. Uncle Harry in the garden. That seemed like such a big garden when we were little. And when I look at the area now, I wonder how it all got in there.
I've always found it funny to the
There's
perspective.
there's a kimono
Oh, there it is.
that came from Japan. My brother was in World War II. Liv's looking on. That was in their kitchen on Cornell Avenue. I think she's getting some water off that, whatever.
I was starting to say it's interesting the perspective of the size of things when you're a child compared to when you're an adult.
Isn't it?
I mean, I can remember being a child at Power School and thinking that gymnasium was just humongous.
Just huge.
And now I go in there and wonder how in the world you would fit anything in there just because of,
All
what
the
it
stuff
was built for.
All the stuff that went on. Well, she got something there. That was in the kitchen. That's my cousin Marilyn and Bud Jenny, her husband Bud. That could have been the year they got married. He'd been in World War II in Europe for several years. Those were probably some Amherst kids. Wonder. Boy, that was a different ball game, I'll tell you, when that was going on.
The war?
Yep. When the kids started getting drafted from from our classes, which they quit doing, but they did at first if they were 18.
So they would take them right out of high school if they were 18 and
Yep.
some never to be seen again.
And some quit and then enlisted, as did Mr. Miller. Mother and Harry, Mother's coat with a big fur collar. That would be Southern California. He was a great brother, 8 years older than I. Marilyn is in between. She's 4 years older than I am, and Harry was 4 years older than she was. Birthdays on the same day. This would have been one of the mission towns in Southern California.
What do you mean by mission towns?
A town where there would be a mission that Junipero Serra would have started. He started the mission line all the way up the coast of California because he, wanted to help Christianize the Indians. He got these missions built all the way up the coast. He was a priest, but a Franciscan. Those homes were very nice on the ocean. I'm wondering if there is a picture with Henry Bruce, who would have been our local boy made good out there in the University of Southern California.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean local boy made good?
Well, he grew up in South Amherst, and he graduated from Amherst High School, became a lawyer, and went out to Southern California and became vice president of the University of Southern California.
Wow.
All out by himself, he did it. Graduating from Central High School. That might be, no, I don't think that's Mrs. Bruce. Lemons or oranges? One or t'other. My brother had an orange tree in front of his house. Well, his apartment, the last place that he lived. This is where I lived when I was out there, 5706 South Figure. No, this is Trojan Apartments. It was on the campus of USC, and I lived there and worked out there for about 3 months. I worked in a specialty dress shop. Those markets were so neat. They would have been open vendor markets. This is Alvera Street it's the oldest street in Los Angeles. It's down by Union Station in Los Angeles. We always loved it. We all got our first pair of huaraches here.
Okay, you're going to have to elaborate on that. I have no idea what that is.
A huarache is a shoe that is woven. It's Mexican. It would be woven by hand. You could get there by getting on a streetcar, going down to Alvera Street, which I did often.
When did you said you lived there for about 3 months?
Yeah, in 1946.
Okay, and you graduated high school in 44.
Yeah, well, I was going to go into nurse's training, and I changed my mind, and it was too late to sign up for BW, so I had several months off, and Harry was just back from the war in the Pacific, going back to his apartment, and I asked him if he'd care if I come out there and spend some time with him. So I went out there and got a job. We lived in the Trojan Apartments. We had an apartment there, and it was very nice. I'd go to work every day on a streetcar.
And when did you go to Baldwin Wallace?
I started in January of 45.
Okay.
Cora and I went to New York City the fall of 44. I would say that's those were oil wells, right? I think. I had no idea where that would have been taken. other than out west. You know, they're pretty good with this camera. Doesn't go flopping around or getting too many sideway views.
It's quite impressive.
Well, Dad sure was excited when he got that camera. It really was something quite new back then. When I saw the Pacific Ocean for the first time, I had told the person who was all excited to show it to me that it looked just like Lake Erie. Did. I don't imagine, as I think about it, they were very pleased I said that. My girl. That would be...
I believe we're back in Amherst now.
We're back to Amherst Parade. It would be the Legion. The schools are marching. Now that looked like the Knights of Columbus, did it? A little bit. And that would be the band. And I think that's Charlie Alexander. The band has grown. Now this would be the 40 and 8, I think they called it. Dr. Snell was in it. There was some part of the war in World War I, and they wore like a red smock over whatever their outfits were. Dr. C.H. Snell, that is, not Elsie.
Is there a relation?
Her husband.
Okay.
She was working for him, I believe, as a kind of like a secretary when she decided she wanted to become a doctor. And she had one heck of a time trying to find a college that would admit her. And she found a college in New York. My kids went to all the Decoration Day parades. I want to tell you that. And that's me when I graduated from BW. That's Julie, because she went to college with me a little bit there. There's Mama. This is symbolic. She handed her over to me because she watched her when I was in my finishing my senior year. Mr. Miller, that's a nice picture of Mr. Miller. He was a handsome dude. I look pretty nice in that cap and gown, don't I?
Sure do.
Mother looks nice too in her suit. Dad ought to be glad too that I finally graduated. Get through our garden.
On Cornell?
Yep. That seems so big. Parker, Harry, and Julie.
As our video winds down, about 10 seconds left, I want to absolutely thank Mrs. Mary Powers Miller for her time and sharing her wonderful memories with us with this video. Is there anything else you'd like to say as we close out here?
Well, I would say that I found this to be a privilege. It was enjoyable, and it was a privilege to bring these wonderful moments into their own time with the pictures, that when people see them, they'll have some idea of what they're all about. And yay, comets.